Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending tonight's webinar. We're just going to give it a moment and just wait to see if we have a couple more people join us, and we will get started in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to give it another 2 minutes just to wait for a few more people to join the webinar, and then we'll get started shortly. So that's about another 2 minutes, and then we will get started. Thank you for your patience. Hello, everybody. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining this webinar tonight to be able to discuss the options process for children that are currently in Year 9. And hopefully I'm talking to children who are currently in Year 9 or their parents and carers. So thank you for joining us. Hopefully this will be informative. So throughout this particular presentation tonight, it's a great moment for us to reflect on how significant Year 9 is as part of your child's educational journey. Your child, with your support, will be making some really informed decisions about the subjects that they wish to continue studying or start studying, as they may not previously have experienced certain qualifications that they want to do. And the idea is that it helps them to achieve their end goals, and whether that's just educational goals, whether it's preparing them for a future career, university, apprenticeships, whatever that might be, the ideal scenario is that we've got a qualification that will support your child to achieve that. So the presentation today is going to talk you through a couple of different things. The qualifications are all pupils must study as part of our core offer at Leigh Stations Academy. I want to touch a little bit on the English Baccalaureate. I'm going to talk about the GCSE and other vocational qualifications that we have on offer here at Leigh Stations Academy. I'm going to talk about the opportunities that you and your child will have to discover more about the different qualifications we have on offer, and then talk about the next steps following this presentation this evening. I just want to point out that this may be different if you've had another child who's gone through the options process before. This is the third year that I have led on the options process and done a presentation similar to this, and this process will be slightly different this year. So just because you may have had a child go through this in the past, it doesn't mean that this will be the exact same process this time around. So just to make you aware, there are some things that are different. Throughout this presentation, you may have some questions, of course, and what I'd like you to do, if possible, is start asking those questions via that form. The link is there on the screen now. I sent it in the email that went out to you, I believe, this morning. So you've got the link there, but you can also see it on YouTube just underneath the video. Down there, there should be a link in the information section with the description of the video, just so you can be able to click on that and then ask any questions that you might have. I've already got 5 already, so I've got 5 that I can answer at the end of the presentation. And hopefully I'll be able to answer all of them this evening straight away live, rather than you having to wait. But if not, I will get back to you if you leave your email address. Okay, so our core offer then, in terms of the qualifications that we have available, our aim is for the majority of pupils in the school to work towards attaining 9 qualifications. We are really aspirational for our pupils, and we believe that they should all pretty much be able to achieve 9 qualifications by the end of Key Stage 4. So all pupils study the following qualifications. So through their English lessons, they will complete both GCSE English Language and GCSE English Literature, and every single one of our children completes both qualifications. Through maths lessons, they complete their GCSE in mathematics, and in science, they complete at least the GCSE in combined sciences. That's where they get 2 GCSEs there, the equivalent to 2 GCSEs. Some people may choose to do separate sciences, and I will talk about that separately as an option. The majority of pupils this year will also be working towards GCSE statistics, and that is something that is different from what's happened in the past. And that will be delivered alongside GCSE mathematics. That's a great qualification, gives pupils loads of fantastic skills to do statistical analysis, understand data and things like that. And there's a lot of overlap with the GCSE and maths. So in a similar way that we deliver English language and English literature together, those 2 qualifications are also now going to be delivered together by the maths team. The ideal scenario is that the pupils that are completing that qualification will do so at the end of year 10. We also, as part of our core offer, have other things that pupils have access to, which are not qualifications. So there'll be 1 lesson a week of physical education. That's a core entitlement, and that's all about physical health and exercise. So it's not a qualification. And then there's also the tutor program that we have for all of our pupils. So that covers aspects such as personal, social, health and economic education, looking at things like careers, helping to prepare for work experience, sex and relationships education, covering some of the other core statutory content like religious studies, computing skills, and also making sure that pupils are prepared for their exams and things like that, such as study skills. So that's something that will also be really helpful. In terms of curriculum time, it's really important for you and for children to know exactly how many hours a week they're going to be spending on each of their subjects. So the table there outlines the allocation of hours to each of the different subject areas. You'll notice that English and maths, the subjects which for many of you are the most important, we really want you to achieve amazing grades in those, they're allocated 5 hours a week. So ideally 1 hour a day of English and maths. As I said before, that in those lessons, pupils will be working towards achieving 2 qualifications over their 2 years in those particular subject areas. Science will then have 4 lessons a week. There'll be that 1 hour a week for core PE, which, like I said, is not a qualification. And then there will be 3 options. Those will be different for every single child, depending on the options that they select and that they prefer to do. And each of those options will give children 3 hours a week to complete that qualification, which is ample time to make sure that they have completed all of the work and had chance to revise ahead of the exams, or for subjects that have non-exam assessment, make sure that those are completed to a really high standard as well. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the Department for Education curriculum review that the Labour government commissioned, which is something that's very different from what we've experienced before as part of the options process. So Professor Becky Francis completed the curriculum review and made quite a lot of recommendations. Some of those recommendations have been agreed by the Department for Education and accepted. One of those is the removal of the EBacc performance measures and the associated EBacc entry and attainment headline accountability measures for schools. So for those of you who know a bit about that, that means that schools were encouraged to push the EBacc and make sure that as many children as possible, up to around 90% was the target of children, are entered for the EBacc. And we have a really able cohort at Leigh Stations Academy. And so that absolutely is something, an aspiration that we've been working towards, along with our other partner schools in the Leigh Academies Trust. Now, this recommendation that's been accepted by the Department for Education means that that particular measure is going to be removed from league tables, and therefore that means that it's no longer compulsory for all students to have to study the qualifications that make up the English Baccalaureate. And so as part of our options process, and to ensure that we give as much freedom as possible for children to make choices and alongside you, that really kind of inform what they want to do and are best for their future, we have of course also followed suit, and we've therefore and changed our options process so that you no longer have to study all the different elements of the EBacc. Okay, so it's no longer compulsory. However, there are loads of benefits to studying a subject within the English Baccalaureate. Research shows that a pupil's socioeconomic background impacts the subjects that they might choose at GCSE, and that might then determine the opportunities beyond school. Studies by institutions like the UCL have shown that studying subjects included in the EBacc, such as humanities and modern foreign languages, provides students with greater opportunities in further education and increases the likelihood that a pupil will stay on in full-time education further. So it's something the government definitely have valued previously, that the government still values these particular subjects, and that also includes subjects such as computing, like computer science, and triple science. And we really truly see the value in those subjects as well. And so we will continue at Leigh Stations Academy to make it compulsory for all students to study a humanities subject at Key Stage 4. That's always been the case here. So all students must pick one of the humanities, either history or geography at GCSE. We would also strongly recommend that pupils consider continuing their study of Spanish. It's absolutely not something we're going to force upon pupils, but it is something we would strongly recommend. We have a fantastic Spanish team, some great practitioners in there, and pupils do experience fantastic lessons. They've really made lots of progress throughout Key Stage 3, and it'll be a great subject that they can continue to do. So although the EBacc isn't compulsory, although it's not on the performance measures in the league tables going forward, that is still something we wanted to talk to you about and make sure you're aware of, and it is an option we would definitely recommend and really promote. So on to the option subjects then that are available. So on this screen here is option A. So that is, like I just said, that choice between whether your child is going to study GCSE history or GCSE geography. And as I said, all children must study and complete one of those qualifications, okay? The other qualifications that your children then choose will be in option blocks B and C for the form that you're going to be filling in. So you get 2 further options that are free choices. The free choices look a bit like this. So on the left-hand side of the screen, there is a list of GCSE qualifications. The first 2 are art and design qualifications. The first one is fine art, and then the other one is photography, which both are very, very different in terms of the type of art that pupils produce. We then have design technology, which is where pupils are using materials and things like that to create products and to a certain specification. And then food preparation, nutrition is the other subject that pupils study as part of their DT rotation in Key Stage 3, usually Miss Stewart, and that's of course where they're getting involved in cooking and things like that. We then got history and geography. Pupils can choose to study both history and geography. So if a pupil chooses to pick one of those subjects in option block A, they can pick the other one in option block B and C. We've then got GCSEs in music, religious studies, Spanish mentioned there, and separate sciences is also an option. If a child studies separate sciences, what that means is they will study combined science like everybody else, that core science entitlement of 4 hours a week, and they will then also pick it as one of their options a further 3 hours a week, and they will get an extra GCSE. Rather than a GCSE in combined science, that's the equivalent of 2 qualifications, they will get a GCSE in biology, a separate GCSE in chemistry, and a further separate GCSE in physics. So all 3 of those are completely separate. We then also have some vocational options over here on the right-hand side. All of those listed are BTECs. The first one is health and social care. And the second set of options is a qualification in performing arts. Both of those are slightly different, as one is around acting, which is most similar to drama that pupils study at Key Stage 3, and the other one is dance. We then have a further 4 pathways available for pupils to pick. So you may have noticed that some subjects weren't on that list on the previous slide. Now, what that means is that pupils can select a preference for a particular pathway, and if they are given that subject, throughout the first module of Year 10, they will study in that subject area. In this pathway, there are 2 different avenues that pupils can go down. Following Module 1, the curriculum leaders will then either assign them onto a GCSE pathway, or they will assign them to the vocational pathway. Because it's important that all pupils get a broad and balanced curriculum offer at Key Stage 4, and because it's prohibited to study certain subject areas in more than one qualification, pupils can only study the GCSE or the vocational qualification within each of these pathways. It's not possible for pupils to study both of them. The pathways are there on the screen. So the first one is the business pathway. And so after the first module of study, if they select to study business, they will then either be placed on the GCSE business course or the level 1-2 vocational award in retail business. The computing pathway is similar. They will then move on to either GCSE computer science, or they will do the Tech Award in digital information technology. The third pathway is our media pathway, whereby pupils will either move on to study GCSE media studies, or they will do the Tech Award in creative media production. And the final pathway is the sport pathway, whereby pupils will either study GCSE physical education or the VCERT Tech Award in health and fitness. All 4 of those pathways have qualifications where there's a significant level of overlap between those courses and the contents. There's a lot of similarity between them. What we want to do is support pupils to make informed decisions and make sure they've got all the information required. So when it comes to some of our events, you'll have the opportunity to speak to staff about the different pathways required. But if you select one of these 4 pathways, it's important to note that the curriculum leader will make the decision as to what the right qualification is for your child at the end of the first module of Year 10. That's after they've spent a bit of time getting to know the pupil, assessing the pupil, and being able to make some really informed decisions. And they, of course, will keep you informed throughout that process within Module 1 of Year 10. So in terms of course variety, it's really important for me just to note at this point and manage expectations that it's not always possible for every child to get their preferences of qualifications that they want to study. To create something like this is quite a challenge, and sometimes there may only be one class of a certain subject. What it might mean is that if your child wants to do a combination whereby they pick, I don't know, geography in option block A, but then they pick maybe art and then perhaps dance, it might mean that both art and dance are in the same option block and there's only one class. So there may be some restrictions. Okay. So I just want to manage expectations and make it really clear that what we do is we put out a form to gather preferences that your child has, and we'll ask them to put it in rank order. What we will then do is make sure that we prioritize ensuring that your highest preference that your child has is the subject that they are assigned to, and then their second preference will then be the one we go to next. But if that doesn't fit within the option blocks, we then go further down that preference list. We do, however, build the option blocks around your preferences rather than just giving you a list of blocks that have already been preset and then maybe having some restrictions. What we've been doing is collecting your preferences and then building the option blocks around that. What that means is we can make as many pupils satisfied as we possibly can do. And we can also look at subject areas where perhaps there's a great increase in interest that maybe reflects a shift from previous years, and look at whether or not we can put on additional classes in other option blocks as well. Equally, it's important for me to know that all courses must be viable to run. And what that means is we have to have minimum numbers of pupils for each of our qualifications. So if there aren't enough pupils that opt to study a particular qualification, that may mean that that qualification does not run. Okay, so it's just really important I manage expectations and let you know that throughout this process, because I know that one of the biggest frustrations from parents and carers as well as children is if they fill in that form and then what you end up with is something different, then that can be quite upsetting. And so I want to just make it really clear that you are submitting preferences for your child and there may be some restrictions. And we will obviously come back to you if there are issues throughout this process. There's also the opportunity to study a GCSE in a heritage language. So what I mean by heritage language is your child may have English as their second language and speak another language as their first language at home, perhaps. And the list of different languages available for these GCSEs are on the right-hand side. Now, this isn't an option in the way that you will study lessons or anything like that here, but I'm aware that lots of our pupils may be studying a language outside of school or go along to a club or something like that, whereby they practice a different language that they speak. If you are interested in doing that, what you can do is you can note that you study a GCSE or you want to study a GCSE in a heritage language. Please be mindful that the qualifications are equally balanced between listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So the child must be proficient in all four of those different areas. Quite often, we have children who are really strong when it comes to listening and speaking, because they maybe talk in that language at home or with other family members or friends, but they may not be as strong on the writing and the reading side. So please note that they need to be proficient in all four of those areas, and then we can put them forward for a GCSE that they can study for independently. And we usually do that at the end of year 10, so it doesn't interfere with the GCSE and all the other exams they'll be having at the end of year 11. So if that is something you're interested in, please do note that on the heritage languages section of the form that you are sent. But also please be aware that for the majority of people who their child doesn't speak a second language, this may not be relevant. Sometimes people get confused because I have left out on here, and I should have included French and Spanish. So if you speak French or Spanish at home, or your child speaks French and Spanish and wants to do a GCSE in those as a heritage language, because that is the language they speak, then that is also applicable. So the form then, we obviously, like I said, will try our very best to ensure that we secure your child's preferred qualifications at Key Stage 4. It's not in anybody's interest for your child to be forced into studying subjects they don't want to do, they're not interested in, and they're not passionate about. We, of course, want to make sure that we give them the opportunities to study the things they really, really want to. And that is why we go through the preferences process, and we gather those preferences from you, and we try to make sure that we give your child the preferences and build the system and the blocks around exactly what suits all your children. That is obviously a difficult task. There's 270 children in year 9, and so it is a challenge. But over the last couple of years, we've absolutely been able to do that, and the vast majority of pupils have got the preferences that they submitted. The form will also give you the opportunity to add in any other comments that you have that you want us to consider. So please do add any comments onto the form if you want us to think about those as we are selecting the options for your child. So how can we help your child to make informed choices? Obviously, it's really important we work in partnership to do this, and there's a lot that we are going to have in place to support your child. So firstly, there are going to be some taster lessons. So this is for subjects that your child already studies that are available at Key Stage 4. Next week, from Monday the 2nd of March, within your child's normal timetabled lessons, they will have a taster lesson of what it would be like to study that subject at Key Stage 4 for GCSE or the vocational option. Those sessions will include some background information about the course content, an explanation of how they'll be assessed, and by that I mean, is it 100% examination? Is it that they've got a certain element of non-examination assessment, or what was previously kind of referred to as coursework? And it will also give them an experience of something about the course. They actually get an opportunity to take part in some activities that are similar to what they would do at Key Stage 4. We then also have our options evening next Wednesday. So that is when we're going to invite you in to come and visit us and get the opportunity to go around and speak to different subject experts and leaders within those departments and get some advice and get some information about the different qualifications that are available. This is particularly helpful if your child is thinking about one of the pathways where there are GCSE and vocational options. We will also have some pupil ambassadors along at that particular event, so you can speak to children that are actually studying those courses too and hear from them. We would ask Angelou parents to arrive from 5 o'clock, Caxton parents to arrive from 5:20, and Hansard parents to arrive from 5:40. That's just so we've got a bit of a staggered start. And of course, please feel free to bring other family members and of course the pupils along too, so that they can ask loads of questions. So that's next Wednesday, the 4th of March. It's there won't be a talk or anything like that at that particular event. It's just pop in, speak to who you want to, and then obviously pop out. And we will close that event at 6:30, and that's when the evening will conclude. So you've got up till 6:30 to ask any sort of questions that you may have. We're also going to have a taster day for subjects that pupils don't currently study, just to make sure that they get the opportunity to experience that, because I appreciate it can be really difficult, making a decision as to whether or not you want to see health and social care if you've never actually had that experience. So the 5 different subject areas that will be on offer are business and that pathway, health and fitness, health and social care, photography, and the media pathway. So on this coming Friday, pupils will experience across their 5 lessons each of those different 5 subject areas. And again, similar to what they'll be doing next week, they'll get information about the course, how they'll be assessed, and also a bit of a taster experience of what it is like to study in that subject area. We also have a taster session for dance. This is completely optional for anybody who may be interested in going to study dance or opt to do that. And that will take place during tutor time on Tuesday, the 3rd of March next week. Pupils will just will come in school uniform as normal. It's only a half an hour session in tutor time, but they'll be able to take off their sort of like shoes, etc., and just be in their socks for some of the practical elements of that particular dance session. If you're interested in doing that, as your child is interested in doing it, then there is a Google form for you to complete for your child to participate in that, just so we know exactly how many pupils want to take part in that particular taster session. We also have further support and guidance available to you and your children to make sure they can make really informed decisions. Okay, so all the information shared today will be made available via a dedicated Key Stage 4 options website, which I will share with you as soon as we've finalised a few things and launched it. And that will give you the opportunity to look at different courses and get more information about that. Pupils can, of course, ask questions of their subject teachers across those taster sessions, the teachers they have already, the pastoral teams for their colleges, and so on. So please do encourage your children to speak to people about whether or not a certain qualification might be suitable for them. We will also share the contact details for the lead teachers on our website so that you can always get in touch with them if you have any questions. And of course, there's the opportunity to meet them in person next Wednesday. Parents and carers can also sign up to get a careers advisor meeting for your child using a link to a Google form. Again, I'll share that link with you. And so if you want to make sure that Miss Saif, who is our careers advisor in school, meets with your child across this process, then you can fill in that form to make sure that she knows that your child really wants a meeting to discuss options specifically. There are loads of other resources externally to help children to consider their careers and their future opportunities. BBC Bite Size has got some different advice on selecting options as well as thinking about future careers. And the National Careers Service and UCAS both have careers quizzes that can be helpful to get pupils to reflect on different subjects that may be suitable to them. All pupils have also got access to UniFrog on their Chromebooks. They can use single sign-on to access this. And there are two key sections of UniFrog that are really helpful. The first is the subjects library. If there's a subject that pupils aren't sure about, or they don't know much about, they can go on there, watch videos and learn a bit more information about that particular subject area and think about whether it would be suitable for them. Equally, the careers library helps them to think about things they might want to do in the future and give them a suggested list of subjects that may help them to get there. So if they're interested in being an archaeologist or a plumber or a court usher, as we've got there on the screen, what subjects will help them to get into that particular field? You may also want to consider looking at some of the different sixth forms and post-16 opportunities and seeing what the requirements may be from qualifications for pupils to join. So, for example, you can look at the Wolf College prospectus now and have a look at particular A-levels. If your child already knows they want to go to university to study medicine and that these are the A-levels they need to study, that might then suggest that to be able to do A-levels in biology, chemistry and physics, they probably need to do triple science at GCSE. So looking at those sorts of things will also help to make informed decisions. So some top tips for pupils that are really, really critical and important for us to say. They should not be influenced by their friends. It must be their own choice. They're not there in lessons to make friends and have fun. They are there to learn. That's really important. They also shouldn't pick subjects because they like or dislike their current teacher. Teachers and timetables change year on year. That shouldn't be what makes the decision. They're going to be studying this qualification for at least 3 hours a week across 2 years. That is a significant amount of time they're going to invest in it. They'll build relationships with teachers that they don't like. And equally, if they really like a teacher now, it doesn't mean they're going to have them next year. So making a decision based on what they really want to do is important. They shouldn't select options because they think it's easy. All qualifications are challenging and rigorous, perhaps in different ways, and children may find some more accessible than others because the way in which they're assessed, but every single child is different and all of them have got a rigor to them. They also shouldn't just pick subjects because it's new and it must be better than what you know. For the last 2 years, I've taught GCSE business, and my first-hand experience is that lots of pupils love it. It is the most popular option subject out there. However, lots of pupils get to the course, and when they figure out that they just haven't become Sir Alan Sugar overnight or Lord Sugar overnight, they then start to get a little bit bored with the course. And actually, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of knowledge to develop. And for some of them, it isn't actually really what they're interested in. So it's really important that your child doesn't just pick a subject because it's different from what they know and they think maybe it's going to be better or more interesting. They really need to do their research and make sure that it is a subject they're going to be interested in. They also shouldn't be totally influenced by one perspective. They need to think about lots of different things, take into account all the different experiences they're going to have across this different options process, the different options they're going to get tasting sessions of, etc., and then make an informed decision overall. They should, of course, read about all the subjects on offer, read about the different qualifications, think about those that are different and new, and find out whether they fit and match with their interests, their passions, their future aspirations. They should, of course, ask questions of teachers, parents, pastoral support staff, and have discussions at home and in school about what might suit them. They should aim for a balanced range of choices and to keep their career and future course options open, especially if, like most children, they haven't yet decided what they want to do, and that's absolutely fine. They should consider subjects they're going to enjoy and that they're going to excel in. At the end of the day, if they get a great qualification and they get a top grade in it because they really enjoy it, then that'll make it all worthwhile. They should really reflect about their interests, their abilities, the knowledge they currently have, and their skill set when reaching a decision. Ultimately, we really want your child to be successful. And so above all, we hope they make a well-informed decision with yours and our support. So what are our next steps? There's a list of dates there on the screen, which kind of goes through the different things I mentioned earlier as part of this process. So we're already here today on the 24th of February for the launch webinar. We've got the options taster day coming up on Friday, where they'll trial 5 new subjects that they haven't yet experienced. Next week, they'll have taster sessions for subjects they do study currently. On Wednesday, the 4th of March, you're invited in to the options evening from 5 p.m. On the 6th of March, we will then send out the Key Stage 4 preferences form after those different events have concluded. On the 18th of March, it's Year 9 Parents Evening, so it won't be too long until you're sent emails to sign up to that and book your appointments. What we'll use that as a last opportunity for you to have any conversations with your child's class teacher if you're not sure about certain options. And then if you could please submit your form by the evening of Wednesday, the 18th of March, that would be much appreciated. We're then going to be working on allocating those preferences over the course of the weeks following that point. It is a long process. And then what we'll do is within module 6, the very end of the year, we will email you to confirm the options that your child has been assigned. So I'm just going to move on to the question and answer session. If you do have any questions, please do pop them in the Google form now and I can answer them live. I do have 6, which I'm just going to work through and hopefully answer anything that you weren't sure about or that I may have missed out. So what is the minimum and maximum number of subjects that students can pick? So in terms of their actual options, every child will have 3 options to pick from, and they will list their preferences for those. The first option must be history and geography, so that's defined by just the humanities there. The other 2 options are free choices, and what we'll do is we'll have one question whereby you put down your child's preferences for both option block B and C, and we'll gather all of those together in one list for you, and then we'll be able to see what the main priority subject is they really are passionate about as the first preference, and then we will go on to the second preference and third preference, so on and so forth. I've been asked whether or not it's possible to study triple science, history and geography together. The answer to that question is very likely to be yes. As I said, there are limitations with the option blocks and what subjects go into which block, but history and geography, as every single child will be studying one of those subjects, it is very likely that those will be across multiple option blocks, and so there'll be lots of flexibility. So yes, a child is very likely to be able to study history, geography and triple science. One parent has asked, their daughter loves sport and dance, their subjects she's passionate about and where she excels. Is it possible to pick both of those? Again, there may be some restrictions between what subjects are in the same block. But if there are lots of pupils that want to study PE or sport within that pathway and dance, it may be possible that they're in different option blocks. I couldn't say with 100% certainty right now until we've gathered all the preferences, but I would certainly hope that they will be options that pupils can pick. I've been asked whether psychology is on your list of options. I can confirm that it is not. I've been asked about taking GCSEs for languages. Now, I mentioned the heritage languages before. That is the defined list apart from French and Spanish, which I didn't include. If your child speaks a language that isn't on that list, then that's not a GCSE we have available. And there are other interests that have been asked about, for example, Hinduism. That in itself is not a qualification. The most likely qualification that aligns with that would be religious studies. But off the top of my head, I think pupils need to be able to study 2 religions in detail to be able to complete the GCSE in religious studies. But Ms. Cannon will be able to answer more about that next week at the options evening event for parents and carers. The Taster Day for the health and fitness section, pupils do not need to bring a PE kit. It'll be a classroom-based session on the Taster Day on this Friday coming up. A bit of an introductory session just to give pupils some information. Can I clarify whether the 4 pathways are B and C options or there are additional subjects on top of that? They are options that would fit within blocks B and C. That is correct. So A will be history and geography, and then B and C will be all the other preferences and any other qualifications. I've been asked what a VCERT is. So that's a vocational certificate, and it is absolutely very, very similar to a BTEC and the equivalent to that. I've been asked whether or not you choose a pathway or options A, B, and C. Are you able to take both? Again, A will be history or geography, and B or C will give the list of GCSEs, the list of vocational qualifications, and the list of the 4 different pathways that I mentioned, and pupils will list their preferences for all of those. Somebody can't attend the options evening. Can you email somebody for information on subjects? You absolutely can. What I would say is when we launch our website, most of the information will be on there. On the website that we launch, it will also have the email address for the leader of each different qualification. So if you've got questions about a specific qualification you'd like to know more about, you can then contact that leader directly to get the information that you need. The newsletter said options form to be submitted after the Easter holidays, which contradicts my slide. I'm sorry if that's been miscommunicated. The form is submitted on the deadline that I said on my previous slide, which is after Year 9 Parents' Evening that particular evening. If a child wants to do computer science GCSE, do they do the BTEC as well, or just the GCSE? So if a child wants to do computer science GCSE, they'll pick the computing pathway. And then at the end of module 1, after it will be Mr. Malik, the director of computer science, he will lead his team in assessing all pupils within that particular pathway, and then we'll place them onto either the GCSE computer science option or the BTEC in digital information technology after that. Can you do sign language? Great question. At the moment, no, you can't, but I do know that the exam boards are looking at developing a sign language GCSE and want to be able to introduce that in the future. But at the moment, it's not available. But if it does become available, we will absolutely share that. In heritage language, is it possible to add any more languages? At the moment, no, that is just the list that are available from the exam boards that we use. So the only qualifications they have available to us. Does your place for a subject depend on how fast you submit your preference form? Absolutely not. So I'm not going to look at anybody's preferences forms until that particular deadline. It's not a race. What we want parents and carers to do with their children is take time to reflect on the options process, think about what options would be best, and then make sure that the preferences and the order in which you put in those preferences are right for your child. So there's absolutely no rush. If I don't get any forms until after Parents' Evening and get all 270 that evening, that's absolutely fine. It won't make a difference. It's then after that point, we then look at every single one and we go from there really and try and make sure we've got as much capability and availability within the different subjects to be able to fit pupils into those classes. In the past, we have increased the number of classes that we've got for some subjects. If my son didn't like the subject that he chose, could he switch to another subject? So yeah, what we do have available is within module 1 and module 1 only of year 10, we allow pupils to switch over. After that point, it all becomes too late and there's a lot of content to catch up on. It is the child's responsibility to make sure they catch up on any content if they make the decision to switch options. But of course, what we don't want to do is for a child to feel within the first few weeks they've made the wrong decision and then force them to spend the next 2 years studying it. What I would say is it also depends on numbers in different classes. We did have a couple of pupils this year who really wanted to switch from their subject to photography, but photography was just full. We assigned 2 classes to photography. So everybody that picked it got that preference and an option. We had 2 classes of photography, but they were completely full. So anybody that then wanted to switch to photography at the start of year 10 Just unfortunately, they weren't able to because there just wasn't enough space in those classrooms to be able to add additional pupils into it. So just bear in mind, if a child really does want to, study a particular subject and that is their passion, make sure that is the first preference that you put forward, because that is the one that we will prioritize making sure that they are assigned to. Okay, I think for now that is all the questions I've received. So what I'll do is I will end the webinar there. Thank you so much. This will be available via YouTube for you to come back to if you need to at any point. If you want to listen to me go through it again, of course, please feel free to. And I will be in touch again with more details and the website as soon as it's live. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Have a great night.